Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Dr. Quack Show. You know, let me tell you, there's a lot of things when I was a kid that I really enjoyed in life, and wrestling was definitely one of them. And there were some people I loved to watch, and there were some people I didn't love to watch. Some people I just really just turned off the TV and walked away. You know, some of us referred to those as bathroom break matches, but that isn't what I'm talking about here. I'm actually talking about my 10 favorite wrestlers, top 10 favorite wrestlers that I love to watch wrestle. The 10 favorite wrestlers out there that really, whenever they came on, kept me glued to the television. And to me, these were my 10. All right. Number 10, I have Doink the Clown. Number 10. He was definitely one of my favorites when I was a kid. During the early 90s, they almost called it, I've heard it called, and I've called it myself, the gimmick era. This is where you've seen a lot of occupational jobs come out there, and, they were characters in the ring, And you had one called Doink the Clown. He was a clown. And when he first came out, he was evil, but he would pull pranks on people. And, he was fun to watch. He really was, especially the early beginnings. When Matt Bourne had him, originally did the character. He was funny as hell. I mean, this guy here, you know, he would come out and pull the fake arm off and hit Crush over top the head with it, or he would throw a bucket of confetti at somebody or a bucket of water for a laugh. He was kind of an evil clown. I mean, of course, later on in this gimmick, he became a good guy and did funny things to bad guys, including throwing a pie in Jerry Lawler's face. You also had his little crew there, literally the midgets, Doink, and you had Dink, Wink, and Pink. And those were some of the most entertaining people that I could watch wrestle. I mean, because it was funny. You had little Doink and Dink versus little Macho Man at times, and other people like that. It was really cool and entertaining to me. I mean, the gimmick era was definitely a different era to me. I can't really judge it in comparison to the Attitude Era and the Golden Era of the 80s and various things like that. But, yeah, Doink the Clown definitely makes my list. Number 9. I go with Taz, the human suplex machine. He was, when I first saw him, of course, I watched a little bit of ECW in my days, and I remember first seeing him in that match with Bam Bam Bigelow. I saw him there, and it was that match there where they fell through the ring, and he had the Taz mission locked on him. Both of them matches, I actually saw them. It was I was closer to an adult at that time. But those were awesome. And, of course, when he made his WWE debut, tapped out Kurt Angle. I mean, he was a little guy at 5'9", I'm guessing, somewhere around that area. And he would beat the fuck out of people. He was just a legitimate badass. It sucked that shortly after that, with his neck injury, it ended his career. But, I mean, legitimately, for the hardcore division, you couldn't have had a better guy in that division when they were doing the hardcore title and things like that. The 24/7 rule. Taz was a badass. Taz was the FTW champion, the ECW television champion. He was world champion, in my opinion. I think he was. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But, he was one of the best. He was definitely one of the more recognizable guys from ECW. And every time he worked, I definitely wanted to watch his matches. To this day, I like to sit down and watch old school Taz matches, from ECW pay-per-views and even a TV show. Thank God for the WWE Network, because that's probably the best way to see it. Number 8 for me was Sting. Sting, to me, now I'm not talking, the Crow Sting. I like that one, but that wasn't really why I like Sting. Sting in the 80s, for me, was awesome. The NWA into the WCW era. He had the flat top hair. He had the rat tail. I remember when I was a kid, when I was in 3rd grade, I think I had the rat tail growing down all the way down to the back. For all you people that don't know what a rat tail is, Look it up. It's an interesting haircut you definitely don't see anymore. I mean, Sting was definitely, one of the coolest people to watch. He always took on Ric Flair a lot of times. You see him messing, fighting the Horseman. I mean, he was definitely great entertainment and, a great champion. I mean, the guy there in the 80s was more who I liked. I mean, don't get me wrong. I liked it when he was, not saying a word for a year in the crow makeup, but it was more me to the 80s. That's what I watched him more and really enjoyed him more. I mean, he finished up his career in the E, had an 0-2 record, taking on Triple H and Seth Rollins, getting hurt in that match, which sucked. I mean, that was legitimately just terrible to watch. His match with Triple H at WrestleMania, I think it was 30, was definitely great to watch. I mean, you had all the people come out, from the NWO and DX, and it was great to watch. But he was definitely one of my more entertainment guys that I loved watching. Number 7. Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Oh, hey, tough guy. he was definitely awesome. I mean, the guy carried a 2x4 in the ring, stuck his tongue out, and chanted USA. He was definitely Americana. When you thought of Americans in professional wrestling, they were patriotic. Jim Duggan's among the top of that list. I mean, he's definitely on that list for sure in the top 5. I mean, he was an awesome guy to watch wrestle. He even became King Duggan, had the crown and everything. In the E, he never got pushed for a title. And it was pretty interesting for that, why he didn't get pushed. He won in WCW. He won like the United States title and things like that. But in the E, when he was there in the WWE, he didn't really get that. He was just a character. Always one of Hogan's friends. As far as the baby faces go, and Hogan was of course the top guy back then. But yeah, I mean, I'll never forget my funniest moment with him was when he cracked the Sheik with the 2x4. At WrestleMania 3, because I watch WrestleManias like a lot lately. I love to binge on them. I watch like the Royal Rumbles from back in the days, because to me that was back when I enjoyed wrestling the most. As they say, when you enter the business less and less, you do and really enjoy it like a fan. You don't enjoy it as much, but you still you love it and you respect it and you want to protect it the best you can. Number 6. The Macho Man Randy Savage. Ooh, yeah, the madness. Macho Man. Macho Man had some of the greatest matches in history. I mean, with Ricky Steamboat, arguably, in WrestleMania 3. A lot of people love that match. A lot of people consider that to be the greatest match in history. I mean, he took on a lot of great guys. I mean, every time he was in the ring, he was entertaining. If he was a good guy, people, cheered him. If he was a bad guy, people booed him. He knew how to keep your attention. I mean, even with Hulk Hogan, with the Ultimate Warrior, with Ric Flair, the list goes on and on with Randy Savage. Trust me. I mean, one of the greatest guys I loved watching when I was a kid. And of course, who can forget Snap Into a Slim Jim? The Slim Jim commercials always with WCW when he was there. I'm glad he got into the Hall of Fame. That was definitely something that was well deserved. Macho Man, rest in peace. You were definitely awesome. But you definitely made my list of the guys that I love to watch. Number 5. And this is the tag team. This was, some people call them knockoffs. Because, of course, there was a team before that that was known throughout the world, known the Road Warriors. But one of my all favorite teams of all time, Demolition. Axe and Smash. No disrespect to the Road Warriors. I love those guys, watching them. But for some reason, because a lot of times when I was a kid, I was an E-kid. I was watching the WWF. I was watching those days. And Demolition was definitely the guys, because they always cut the cool promos, I loved watching them when they were bad guys, when they were managed by Mr. Fuji. When he turned against the Warlord Barbarian. I watched that. My favorite moment with them is actually tied up with Jim Duggan too. All three of them with their face paint. Hogan, yeah. Jim Duggan with the American flag put across his face, and they took on Keem and the Boss Man and Andre the Giant at SummerSlam, big 6-man tag. I just thought it was the coolest thing ever, because Demolition would just come out there and beat you up, Probably their most memorable moment was when they were 1-2 at the Royal Rumble. I think that was 90, I want to say, 89. Somebody probably wanted to tell me that for sure. But I know it was definitely that time, maybe 88. But, yeah, I mean, Demolition was definitely awesome. I loved, just watching them work. They were awesome people to watch. All right, number 4. This may shock a lot of you, okay? Number 4, okay? When I was a kid, this was my favorite wrestler. When I'm talking like my, pre-teen years, this was my favorite wrestler. It was not Hulk Hogan, okay? I really wasn't much of a Hulk Hogan fan. I enjoyed him, but I was a bigger fan of this guy. And this guy, is considered the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time. And that was the Honky Tonk Man. The Honky Tonk Man, I thought, was just the coolest guy ever, man. I mean, he was the Elvis impersonator, as everybody calls it. But he had a guitar, and he had Peggy Sue, and he had the Colonel, and came down in the pink Cadillac, had his own song, which was pretty cool. I love, just a Honky Tonk Man, I always thought that was awesome. Honky, I mean, he took on a lot of guys. Jake the Snake at WrestleMania 3. He won it from Ricky Steamboat. He had, pretty good matches. I mean, he knew how to work well. He knew how to, entertain the crowd. I mean, he wrestled guys like Brutus Beefcake. The Ultimate Warrior in that SummerSlam match where he lost in 30 seconds. I mean, just the irateness that he put out there always captivated me, when you look for inspiration at times, you can look at that, when you're trying to act like you're seriously pissed off. That was inspiration right there, like guys like Honky Tonk Man and things like that. Because he knew how to cut a promo. He was excellent at it. My favorite moment was his match with Jake, but it was more along the lines because you had Alice Cooper and you had Jimmy Hart going at it one-on-one. And, Honky, of course, won that match by pulling the ropes, pulling the tights. Of course, he'll deny that. He didn't do that. But he was definitely my favorite, probably as a young, kid, pre-teen, definitely of watching when I was watching wrestling back then. That all started with my grandfather. I was at 4 years old when I first saw the match of Superfly Jimmy Snuka and Don Morocco in the cage. But that's why, wrestling has always been a part of my life, is because of my grandfather. That really has, even to this day, I still watch it, and I still think about, time with him. But let me move on here. Number three, and this guy, and I'm talking back towards, when I first saw him, I believe it was World Class. I believe it was that or Global. I couldn't remember which one. I did see him pre-WCW. I will say that. And that was Cactus Jack, otherwise known as Mick Foley, Dude Love, Mankind. Every one of those characters, they had their own, excitement with them. These were people I loved watching. I always thought they were really good to watch. I thought he was really good to watch in the ring. I mean, of course, a lot of people, they loved this Hell in a Cell match. A lot of people call that probably his greatest claim to fame was when he got thrown off the cage. And that fits well. I mean, he had a lot of great matches. I mean, his matches with Triple H back before he became, when he was Hunter Hearst Helmsley, back before he became Triple H. Those were awesome matches, involving him and China there. Back in WCW, his matches with Vader. I mean, those were some of the most brutal physical matches I ever would see. I remember when I was a kid, when he got paralyzed. Well, not paralyzed, when he got amnesia. When Vader powerbombed him on the concrete and he was trying to find out who he was and he wasn't sure. And during that little stint, that right there, I felt the realism. I was I think 12, 13 years old. And I really felt the realism in it, and at that point I was like, "Oh no, is he really hurt? Is this some milk? Is he all right? And that's what you got to do as a wrestler. You got to be able to go out there, and make them realize, make them think. They may come up to you and say, "Oh, it's fake, it's scripted," and all this other words they like to use, choreographed. But if you can put the probability of reality in there, it makes it really special. It makes wrestling more entertaining to watch, that the probability of realism can be involved. Number two, this was another guy in that time frame when Foley entered WCW. Another guy I watched way back in the days, and it was I watched him World Class with taking on Chris Adams. This guy was trained by gentleman Chris Adams, and he went to WCW, formed with the Hollywood Blondes. Now, of course, I'm talking about Steve Austin. Stunning Steve to me was one of the funniest characters. He would just come out there and he would do this coming out there and he would taunt people. He had on, some of the goofiest trunks I've ever seen, with definitely 80s and 90s style involved. And, the blonde hair. Of course, I love Stone Cold, don't get me wrong. But every gimmick he always portrayed, you always felt his passion. You always felt the way that he wanted that character to be portrayed, and he grabbed you just like this. He pulled you in from the screen, and he was definitely one of the greats there. 3-time Royal Rumble winner, 1996 King of the Ring, multiple-time world champion, won many belts. Come up with the greatest promo probably in WWE history, I'm going to say. And that would be Austin 316, how that came about, the King of the Ring. I thought that was the start of everything. But he always had great promos and always great entertainment. Everybody loved him because he was the anti-establishment. He was the guy that went across the boss and tried to fight for his rights. He was Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was, that guy. And nobody else, could anybody else have pulled off this gimmick? I don't think so. I don't think there's really anybody that could have pulled it off the way he did it. I'll say that. There may be guys that could have done it, but the way he did it, yeah, I think that was made for him. My number one. Don't get pissed at me, America, okay? I want to hear your debate on this, by the way. So if you want to tell me what your top 10 of your favorite guys to watch was, I ain't asking for the greatest. I'm asking your top 10 to watch. My number one guy, ever since I saw him, in WCW, I saw him. I think the first time he wasn't, really there. He would use the full Nelson suplex, as his finisher. The full Nelson German suplex. He used it at that time, and that would be Chris Benoit. Chris Benoit. He's done a lot. He did a lot. He went through, New Japan Pro Wrestling over there. It was the Pegasus Kid. He went to ECW, WCW, WWE. The guy in the ring was one of the most technical, savvy wrestlers I've ever seen. And, they say, he modeled his career a lot after Dynamite Kid with his in-ring ability, his workout. He looked a lot like him. He was one of the best in-ring workers that I ever seen wrestle in the ring. The guy always got shortchanged a little bit because of his promo skills. But let me tell you, if you ever wanted to see his promo skills, you would have believability. Watch ECW. Go watch him when he's taking his hands like this and, he's doing his promo. I'm sure people know what I'm referring to. If you don't, ask somebody because I don't want to go into that. That's something you should know. That would be with ECW. So take a look. But anyways, there's a lot of things with him. Chris Benoit was my favorite wrestler to watch. Got to meet him, one time down in Baltimore. Actually, a couple times. I met him once when I was 17. I met him the second time when I was 26. So, it was pretty awesome getting to see him. In general, he was my favorite wrestler. He was the guy, with the diving headbutt. He had the crippler crossface. He was a guy that, made it look as real as possible. Definitely one of my favorites to watch. And that's probably why he's my number one. Really just an inspiration, for what he did and the ethic, the work ethic he put into this business. Well, that's my top 10. I hope you all enjoy. I'm going to have another video here. Might even have a guest. I do believe I'd have a guest. I think we got some certain things to talk about here. Might even have a round table. So tune in. I hope y'all enjoy. Like, subscribe, share. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good night.